During the last half of the 20th century, the Lord's recovery was also spreading in the southern regions of the Philippines, though on a somewhat different path. The southern Philippines is divided into two main sections, Visayas and Mindanao in the far south. The Lord's recovery in the south had its beginning in the Misamis Occidental region of Mindanao, where a small group of brothers were deeply affected by the writings of Watchman Nee. Late in 1942, two among them brought the gospel and some of the truths concerning the recovery to a Filipino denominational group meeting in the city of Aloran. They also translated the writings of Brother Nee and later on Brother Lee into Cebuano. As a result, the whole group of nearly 50 turned to the Lord's way of recovery by taking the ground for a testimony in the city of Aloran. The church there meets today in this new assembly hall across the street from City Hall and the town square. The church in Aloran grew rapidly as the saints focused on two main items, preaching the gospel and teaching the truth. Not far from Aloran is Oroqueta City, a beautiful city that is the economic hub of this rural agricultural district. The history of the church there is not only interesting, but somewhat typifies the spread of the recovery in the whole of Mindanao. By 1947, two meetings had begun in homes. Though outside of denominations, the vision of these early church pioneers was still not that clear. Yet they increased in number and in their enjoyment of the truth. The turning point came in 1967, when Brother Lee visited this region. A conference and training was held at Aurora, Zamboanga del Sur. During this conference, Brother Lee led the saints to enjoy the all-inclusive Spirit of Christ through the exercise of their regenerated human spirit, especially in the matter of prayer reading. The saints were not only enlivened and enlightened, but also fully turned and brought into the Lord's recovery and the fellowship of the churches. Following this conference at Aurora, this building was acquired in 1967 and served as the meeting hall for the church in Oroqueta. During the 70s, saints from Oroqueta helped in the gospel propagation to other parts of Mindanao and Visayas. During this same period, the growth of the church in Oroqueta City was tremendous. A little more than 2 years ago, a new property was acquired and construction began on this beautiful new meeting hall. Today, the church there has more than 3,000 saints, with more than 1,500 regularly attending the meetings. Another center for the work in Mindanao is in Ozamis City. The church there also has a long and rich history, though it has also been subject to its share of the enemy's frustrations and attacks. The most recent rebellion in the West and Europe in the late 1980s and early 90s has had a significant impact on the churches in this region. But the resolve and steadfast standing with the ministry by the majority of the leading ones and co-workers in the region has preserved the testimony and even been the impetus for a recent revival in life and service among them. This beautiful new training center in Ozamis City houses the 4-month-long Nazarite training for non-college graduates desiring to be trained in the Lord's move. The regional center of the literature work is in Iligan City, the home of the Philippines Gospel Book Room, where many of the books of Brother Nee and Brother Lee have been translated into Cebuano, including the recovery version. The center of the work in Visayas is in Cebu City, the second largest city in the Philippines. The church in Cebu was raised up in 1956. Today, the church life is thriving in this beautiful and important city. The churches in both Visayas and Mindanao were very much affected by the first Manila frustration in 1961, but began to recover and had a fresh start in 1963. Brother Lee also visited Cebu in 1967, and through his ministry and helping the saints in the matter of contacting the Lord by exercising the Spirit, the saints were stirred up to go on with the Lord in a fresh and living way. And the leading ones were also moved to fully follow the ministry. The church here and those throughout Visayas were helped immensely and strengthened to stand firm through the storms that have come and gone since that time. Today there are more than 280 churches in the southern region with more than 25,000 saints. The stories of preaching the gospel and establishing churches in the remote villages and towns of the southern districts are very inspiring. A tremendous price was paid by the dear servants of the Lord that labored to bring the recovery to this remote tropical region.
Come home.
The warm and receiving spirit of the saints in the Philippines is unforgettable to anyone who visits there. The door of hospitality is always open in the Philippines. And be sure that once you have been touched by the hearts of these dear brothers and sisters, you will long to return. May the Lord's testimony in the Philippines continue to grow in grace and in number till He comes. And may the abundant blessing that He has outpoured on His whole body through the labor and suffering of the saints be manifested in His recovery throughout the earth.